My name is Ade, and I have lived in the village of Akanbi all my life. If you ask anyone in my village today about the money tree, most of them will refuse to speak. Some will pretend it never happened. Others will just tell you one thing: leave that forest alone. But I can't forget, because I saw everything. And what I saw still wakes me up at night. It all started with my neighbor, Kunal. Kunal lived 2 houses away from mine. Back then, he was the poorest man in the entire village. His farm barely grew anything. His clothes looked like they had survived a war. Sometimes my mother would secretly send me to give him food. But Kunal was proud. He would smile and say, "One day I'll see. God will remember me." I didn't believe him. Nobody did. Then one night, something strange happened. I remember the day clearly because it was the night the harmattan wind suddenly stopped. The air became strangely quiet. I had gone outside to fetch water when I saw Kunal walking toward the forest behind the village. That was unusual. Nobody goes into that forest at night. The elders say the forest doesn't belong to humans. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. So I followed him. Quietly. I stayed far behind so he wouldn't see me. The deeper we went into the forest, the darker it became. Soon the lantern Kunal carried was the only light in the darkness. Then he stopped. Right in the middle of a clearing. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. But when my eyes adjusted, my heart nearly stopped. There was a massive tree standing alone. But this was no ordinary tree. The bark looked twisted, almost like wrinkled skin. And then I noticed something that made my stomach turn. There were faces inside the tree. Human faces. Their eyes were open. Their mouths frozen like they were screaming. I almost ran. But then the tree spoke. The tree spoke. Its voice sounded like many people whispering at once. Said, "Kunal, you have come." Kunal dropped to his knees like he had been waiting for this moment. His voice was shaking when he replied, "I want wealth." The tree laughed. "I swear to you." The branches moved like arms twisting in the air. Then the tree said something I will never forget. Something that still echoes in my head even today. Said, "Wealth requires sacrifice." I wanted to run at that point. But fear had glued my feet to the ground. Kunal stayed there for a long time, talking to the tree in whispers I couldn't hear. Eventually he stood up and walked back toward the village. I hid behind a bush until he passed. And that was the night everything changed. Because just 3 weeks later, Kunal was suddenly rich. Not just comfortable. He started building a huge mansion right in the center of Akanbi. Bright lights. Iron gates. Expensive cars. People traveled from other villages just to look at his house. When villagers asked where the money came from, Kunal always said the same thing. "God has blessed me." But I knew the truth. Or at least, thought I did. Then people started disappearing. At first it was just rumors. A hunter who never came back. A trader who vanished on the road. But the strange thing was, every time someone disappeared, Kunal seemed to become even richer. And then the crying started. Every night at exactly midnight, a woman's voice would echo from the forest. Begging. Screaming. Crying for help. The sound was so disturbing that many villagers stopped going outside after sunset. But I knew where the sound was coming from. The tree. The same tree I saw that night. I tried to ignore it. I tried to pretend I hadn't seen anything. But one night curiosity defeated me again. So I went back to the forest. And what I saw that night was worse than anything I could have imagined. Kunal was there again, standing before the money tree. But this time, he wasn't alone. There was a man tied to the ground. The man was begging, crying, trying to crawl away. Kunal didn't even look at him. He simply poured something from a calabash onto the roots of the tree. And suddenly the ground began to shake. The branches started moving violently. Then the tree opened. I know it sounds impossible, but the bark split apart like a giant mouth. And the man tied on the ground, was slowly pulled inside the tree. His screams still echo in my ears. Money began falling from the branches. Bundles of it. Kunal laughed as he picked them up. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. Kunal wasn't just visiting the tree. He was feeding it. I ran back to the village that night. I wanted to tell someone. Anyone. But who would believe a story about a tree that eats people and grows money? For weeks I stayed silent. Until something happened yesterday. Something that made me realize this nightmare is far from over. Because last night, while I was walking past Connell's mansion, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There were 3 strangers tied in the back of his truck. And Connell was driving toward the forest again. But this time, he wasn't alone. Someone else was sitting beside him in the truck. Someone I had never seen before. A tall man wearing a black robe. And as the truck passed under the streetlight, the man slowly turned his head and looked directly at me. They looked exactly like the faces inside that tree. I don't know who that man is. And I don't know what Connell is planning tonight. But I'm going back to the forest. Right now. Because if what I think is about to happen actually happens, then the entire village of Akanbi may not survive the night. And if I don't return, you will know why.